Pamela Vance was screaming at the city inspector while her $800,000 McMansion sank into 3 feet of swamp water, and all I did was sip my coffee and watch. You're probably wondering how we got here. It started with a creek. My creek. The air reeked of swamp rot and broken concrete as I stood at the boundary of my destroyed backyard and watched Pamela Vance, the HOA despot, scream at a city inspector while her $800,000 McMansion subsided another inch into the mere flood warnings. Howled from squad cars, frogs taunted from drowned lawns, and a rusted mailbox drifted by like a morbid parade. This was my existence now, and you're likely wondering how it got this way. That little creek snaking through my yard sanctuary after long days as a plumber was never just water. It was serenity, where I'd sit with a beer and a fishing pole, catching nothing but tranquility as dragonflies fluttered and reeds whispered. But serenity doesn't last when an HOA smells blood. What began as a trickle became war, and I was willing to fight dirty to win it. Years ago, the creekside was our sold timers in a patchwork of homes. From when this town was fields across the development, Pinewood HOA governed their beige kingdom of cloned houses and choreographed holiday trim. We were annexed overnight, our peaceful lives devoured by their regulations. Pamela Vance, Pinewood's self-styled queen, rapped on my door one sultry Saturday. Her pastel yoga wear, immaculate her clipboard, a weapon on the chair of community standards. She declared her smile as warm as a court subpoena. Your creek is an unauthorized water feature, a safety hazard to children and wildlife. I stared agog. It's a natural creek older than your development. Count codes protected. She scribbled furiously and stormed away, leaving a waft of perfume and venom. Days later, a violation notice was plastered on my door, citing unsafe open water and non-native species, apparently frogs. Then another menacing $100 daily fines. Unless I complied, I returned a letter quoting my deed's drainage easement, but Pamela arranged a mandatory inspection. 3 strangers strolled my yard with tape measures, snapping photos as if I were a criminal. While Pamela oversaw challenging me to respond, I remained steadfast, arms crossed, protecting my creek at the next HOA meeting. Pamela announced my creek a public safety hazard based on erosion, mosquitoes, and insurance concerns, ironic considering their swampy subdivision. She presented me with a packet requiring me to fence the creek, fill it, or pay for weekly inspections. I informed her where to shove it politely. The harassment increased. Anonymous complaints regarding my unkempt yard. My mailbox over my mailbox toppled, rocks dumped in the creek to clog it. I caught Pamela taking photos of my property from her SUV engine, running like a getaway car. I refused to buckle, keeping the creek open, my sanctuary intact. But Pamela wasn't finished. One Wednesday morning, a cement truck rumbled down the alley beside my house. I dashed out as a worker in a neon vest led the chute over my creek. What the hell? I warned HOA drainage project. He growled, unperturbed, before I could intervene. Concrete flowed, smothering pebbles, reeds, and frogs in a gray sludge. I slipped in the mud, scraping my arm raw, screaming as the truck continued to pour. By the time they drove away, my creek was a lifeless ditch. Pamela stood on the sidewalk, smirking. I wiped mud from my face and smiled back. She'd won that round, but she'd awakened a beast. The first rain tasted like a gift. Soothing the dry streets, I watched from my porch as water struck the concrete scar where my creek had once flowed, pooling uselessly, spreading across my yard like a bruise by noon. Sidewalks were flooded, debris swirling in clogged drains. Pamela stood under a huge umbrella, gloating as water lapped at her flower beds. 2 storms later, the neighborhood disintegrated. Mrs. Larson's basement was flooded. Mr. Rivera sandbagged his porch, and Maple Drive was a stagnant lake, stranding cars. The HOA blamed homeowners, improper grading, personal drain failures, never a mention of the concrete that debilitated the drainage system. I kept quiet, sitting in meetings, nodding as they flashed satellite pictures and imposed $250 drainage inspections behind the scene. I was a ghost snapping. Flooded yards, submerged mailboxes, and soggy HOA common areas, with my Nikon pretending to be a hobbyist. My drone picked up patches of water, stagnating where the creek once ran. My notebook recorded dates. Damages and victims, nobody noticed. Too busy fighting each other, neighbors became vicious. Larson blamed Rivera's children for clogging drains. The Thompsons accused the Patels of diverting runoff. The HOA stoked the fire with Pamela heading a flood mitigation task force that issued fines and fueled arguments. Tension simmered like a kettle about to scream. Karen strutted with her HOA badge feeding on chaos, issuing new rules and inspections she slapped me with. A landscaping plan demands citing drainage concerns. I asked if it should fix her illegal concrete, but she threatened more fines. I signed her forms, adding them to my evidence binder, biding my time. The land was shifting, Alvarez retaining walls, sagged Larson's lawn sloped. Driveways cracked water, trapped underground was swelling the earth, straining against Pamela's hubris. Nature doesn't forgive, and I was ready to assist it. Collect weeks of rain turned the neighborhood into a swamp. Streets became rivers, manhole covers, vomited gutters, tore loose houses, cracked fissures, slithered up walls, doors warped, garage floors buckled. I washed from my porch, coffee in hand, as Pamela screamed into her phone. Her rose bushes drowned water creeping up her steps. The HOA scrambled sandbags, gravel dumps, emails, blaming city drains. Pamela sued the city claiming negligence. But the truth was undeniable. The creek's death caused, this blame shifted to Mew. Hisper's emails then, a violation notice accusing me of careless maintenance and flood contribution. Pamela handed it to me herself, rain-drenched voice shaking with anger. I nodded, signed nothing, and let her vent my smile, intimidating her. I knew the creek wasn't gone, just hidden, seeping, waiting in my garage. I dug out a blue folder from my grandfather, 1952 surveys, a 1978 county letter, verifying the creek's protected easement and state watershed directives. The HOA had broken them all. I contacted the County Water Authority and City Environmental Office, demanding inspections for unauthorized drainage alterations, leaving out the HOA's name using a burner email. I sent drone images, concrete, poor pictures, easement papers, and code infractions to news channels, Facebook groups, and the HOA's banned forum. 3 days later, county and city trucks showed up. Inspectors spent hours measuring the concrete, taking samples, and scowling at my proof. That evening, a news piece editorials of our flooded neighborhood, hints of illicit drainage tampering. The next morning, a county investigation notice landed on the HOA. Pamela stormed an emergency meeting, slamming papers, yelling about slander and conspiracies. A projector displayed my whistleblower photos, concrete trucks, easement maps, redline codes. The room fell silent. Board members squirming. Pamela claimed the concrete was temporary, but when asked for permits, she froze. News stories grew brutal, tossing around reckless and criminal penalties. Residents vented on camera about mold and sinking values. An environmental group demanded restitution. County notices plastered the community center city. Inspectors probed home foundations. Lawsuits brewed. Homeowners targeting the HOA and Pamela personally. Her allies dwindled. Meetings emptied. Her empire cracked like the neighborhood's walls. City citations landed red, tagging homes, including Pamela's, as unsafe movers. Vans swarmed as families fled, sinking houses. Insurance companies denied claims. Citing HOA negligence, foreclosures loomed. Pamela's mansion was condemned and she fled to an RV, its wheels sinking into mud. The HOA's final meeting was a funeral dollar, $2.3 million in liabilities. No assets. Residents voted to dissolve it. Pamela's objections ignored. She was last seen hauling shredded files under a marshal's glare. The neighborhood chose redemption with county grants. We restored the creek, tearing out concrete, planting grasses and willows. When water ran again, clear and alive, dragonflies came back and frogs sang. I carved a sign along the creek, nature always wins. Not spy truth, Pamela's RV disappeared. Her house a swampy ruin. New families welcomed the restored wetlands, letting the land story shine. I sit along the creek, now feeling its pulse, knowing it outlasts arrogance. The battle cost me scars, but it taught me the land remembers, and it always wins.